Thank you for tuning into the Shiurim in Likutei Torah. This week's Parshas Re'eh, first of all, something stands out automatically in Likutei Torah. The amount of maamarim that are in Parshas Re'eh, a tremendous amount of Likutei Torah for the Parsha, and then even more on Chodesh Elul, which is inside of Parshas Re'eh. And Elul and Re'eh are connected. The Rebbe explains how Re'eh is seeing Hashem's brachas, and the Maamar in Likutei Torah starts out, we're going to see how the bracha comes down in an inner way, lifneichem, inside your innards. And then and Elul is about Hashem coming to us and showing us a kind face and then walking with us step by step throughout life. And the length of the amount of maamarim in Parshas Re'eh stands out by itself. And then something interesting happens. Next week, Parshas Shoftim, it's probably the only parsha where there's no Likutei Torah, no Torah. Torah and Beishis and Shmayis, but the same idea. So in Shoftim there's no Likutei Torah. So Shmuel Butman says a good word. He says that Rei Aneichi Neisim Fneichem Ayem Bracha, tons of Likutei Torah, as much Likutei Torah as needed, as you want. Shoftim v'Sheitrim, having to do with a Bezdin and everything. Okay, fine, it's al pi halacha, you're allowed, but no Likutei Torah. The Likutei Torah is above the idea of Shoftim v'Sheitrim. In the beginning of Likutei Torah, and then we'll go into some of the Elul, especially the Maamar that the Rebbe calls the lev, the heart, because it's printed on page Lamed Beis. We'll speak about that more in detail. The heart of the Mishneh Torah of Likutei Torah. Sefer Devarim is called Mishneh Torah. It goes over the entire Torah and it has to do with the entire Torah. And this would be the lev, the heart of the Mishneh Torah, that Maamar on page Lamed Beis of Likutei Torah, which means that that it's really in a way at the heart of the entire Likutei Torah, because the Mishneh Torah of Likutei Torah is a rehash of all the previous Likutei Torah, according to this Maamar. We'll explain that more in detail. But now let's start with the first Maamar of this week's Parsha. And question is, it says that every place where it says where it says in the Torah today, Chazal tell us that this is forever. We have to understand how this comes out today, and also why it says here I am giving you in front of you today a bracha. It should say lachem. Here I'm giving you today a bracha. What's lifneichem, in front of you? So now the Rebbe teaches, first of all, in front of you being inside of you, that every Jew has an inside, an inner heart to Hashem, an inner soul to Hashem, and chitzeni is an outside. As it says, panim b'panim dibe Hashem imachem. When we receive this Torah and take on His Torah, then we get the level of panim b'panim, that Hashem's innerness comes out to our innerness and picks up our innerness. This is what's special about anyone who takes on the Torah, that their innerness takes on a connection and has a connection with Hashem that comes through accepting His Torah. And as it says in many places, the Alter brings down in different places in Shir, where it talks about the greatness of this. And it's brought out that this bracha comes down and permeates itself into many different levels. First of all, it comes down through Torah, which is Chachma, and then the Chachma itself comes into this point of wisdom, comes out into Bina, and comes out into other levels. After it comes out into Bina, understanding, where a person doesn't just take in one great feeling for Hashem or one great concept for Hashem, but rather he thinks about it and contemplates it. Then there's the Vav of Hashem's name, which denotes that what you think about also has to come into the emotions. And then not only should it come into the emotions, but it should come out into actions through thought, speech, and action, that we start thinking what Hashem wants and speaking what Hashem wants and doing what Hashem wants. And the time of Golus, it says Ein Hashem Shalem, which means that the greatness of Hashem isn't revealed to us properly in a way that permeates everything. And that's because of the Orla on the heart. That's because of the foreskin that is on the heart. And we have to take off the main foreskin. Circumcise your hearts and don't have a strong neck anymore. Don't be stubborn against Hashem. And then, now the Rebbe explains in Tanya that Hashem then takes off the priya, the small Orla, the thinner foreskin that's on the heart, and Hashem really opens up the heart. And thinking a lot about Hashem brings you to a love of Hashem, but it also brings you to a bittul to Hashem. You realize the greatness of Hashem, and you give up things that are not in line with Hashem, and not in line with Hashem's will. And this is also a way that it comes out. And here's a kitzur. B'shas Kabbalah Satira, at the time when the Torah was given, it was written, Panim b'panim diber Havaya imachem. Hashem spoke with us face to face. When you accept the Torah, when you take on the Torah, there's this inner connection you have with Hashem. Nimshach l'kol echad b'chinas Havaya, b'chinas panim b'neshama. The level of Havaya was brought down inside into the neshama when they received the Torah. B'chinas hayud shemu hu chachme, she b'chinas bittul shel mayla me'abina. The first thing is this one dot, the Yud, that's in Hashem's name, which is Chachma. They recognize it, but recognizing greatness of Hashem means that you're batul to Hashem, you're nullified to Hashem. And then it comes down into Bina, to be understood, and then into Das, where it should turn into Mides. But before it comes down into Das, where it goes to the Mides, when a person contemplates on the greatness of Hashem, and just contemplating on that, then the chachma, which has bittul in it, and the contemplation that the person does are together. And they are trein rein v'lemis passion. These are two friends that don't separate. Then you have v'chinas havav, v'amshacha me'chachma bina l'shisha midei shebalev. V'nikra nachal Eson. Then you have the river of Eson. Eson could mean old and ancient. It's taking this high level of chachma, this level of wisdom, and bringing it down into the 6 midas, which are Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Chayidin, Yisoid. Kindness, severity, and mercy, which mercy is it leaves room for, it recognizes that there is severity, but it goes in the way of Chesed. Netzach means that the idea should come out, victory, that what Hashem wants should come out into the world, and a feeling that a person wants to bring Hashem out into the world. Haid is that things that go against Hashem and go against what's good should be subdued. And Yisoid is the feeling to connect, to wanting to teach, to wanting to bring Hashem out into the world. And then this comes down into a person's machshava dibur ma'aseh, and affects their thought, speech, and action. But the idea that the name is not complete, Yud K and Vav K stay separate in Golus, which means, and the source of Golus is the spiritual, and the source of the spiritual Golus is the spiritual Golus within a person himself, that their thought and their contemplation hasn't permeated their heart. And that is called a dried up river. And how do you undry that river? How do you irrigate that river? Through through purifying the heart, through removing the oil of the heart, which means not thinking about things outside of desires that are not in line with Hashem, but rather focusing one's attention to Hashem and to bringing Hashem into the world. And then Hashem will give a milah to your heart, which is Mal Yud K, that Yud K, the word milah is Mal, the circumcising, and Yud K, which means that it circumcises the heart and brings Yud K, the Chachma and the Bina, into it. And this comes down into the heart of you and your children. And Es Levavcha Ves Levav Zarecha are the Rosh Tevev of Elul. Es Levavcha Ves Levav. Because these are the Yemei Ratzain. And like it's explained in the Dibur Maschal Ani LeDodi, that is the summary of the first Maamar of Elul. And now we should go into this Maamar that's called the Lev of Likutei Torah of Mishneh Torah. It's interesting that the Rebbe calls it this. And the Rebbe points out that this Maamar is printed on page Lamed Beis, not because the Tzemach Tzedek placed it on page Lamed Beis, and not because the Alter Rebbe asked that this Maamar eventually be placed on page Lamed Beis when there'll be a compilation. No such thing happened. The person who was printing the maamarim put the maamarim onto a printing press, and this ended up on page 32. But the Rebbe says nothing happens by chance, and especially an idea in Torah has a deeper meaning behind it. And the deeper meaning is that this is the lev, the heart of the Mishneh Torah of Likutei Torah. Now, the Dvarim is called Mishneh Torah because it's a rehash of the whole Torah, and it has to do with the entire Torah. If somebody would ask, usually, does the Dvarim of Likutei Torah have a specialness? Is it connected to the whole year's Torah and Likutei Torah? A person would say, I don't think so. But the Rebbe is telling us, yes, it does. There is a Mishneh Torah of Likutei Torah. The same way that Devarim is connected to the whole and a rehash of the whole Torah and a strengthening to the whole Torah, so too, in Likutei Torah, there's a Mishneh Torah of Likutei Torah. And the heart of this Mishneh Torah of Likutei Torah, which is therefore in a way the heart of the entire Likutei Torah, is this Maamar of Ani LeDodi v'Dodi li Rashi Tevis Elul. And this is the Maamar where the Alter Rebbe explains that in Elul, it's the time of the king in the field. And he starts out with a question. Elul is the time of Hamshachas Yud Gimel Midas Yerachmim. In general, Elul is the time, first of all, the Alter Rebbe says, of Yisrus Del Tata, of our work. What is Elul about? Ani LeDodi, us doing work for Hashem. And Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that's when you have the Dodi Li, the godliness that comes out because of our work in Elul. And it's the time of the great his galus malchusay, that you see and feel his kingship, and therefore we call him Hamelech, and because his malchus is on all worlds and much more revealed at that time, much more felt. And it says here also in the higher worlds, even in the highest worlds, in the worlds that can't be contemplated, the yira, the ema of the king, the great awe of the king, upachta, in the fear of the king in a positive way, comes down even on those levels, and from there it comes down to our neshamis, that we receive the il malchus shemayim. That's if we accept it and we take it in. So then the Alter Rebbe asks, 1 second, how come if in Elul is the time of his galus Yud Gimel Midas Yerachmim, which helps us in our work, and the Rebbe explains that that's the Dodi Li within Elul itself. If it's a time of his galus Yud Gimel Midas Yerachmim, if the 13 attributes of mercy are revealed in Elul, why are they not Yomim Tovim itself? Why is not the whole month one big Yontif? And somebody will say, well, how would that work? Well, when Mashiach comes, we're going to be strengthening ourselves and working in Ruchnius and doing everything. So, and by the way, the Rebbe explains that those Yugim Rachmim actually the Dodi Li within Elul, but it doesn't change the fact that the main thing is Ani LeDodi. And on this, the Alter Rebbe brings a mashal of Melech Basada. Now, how does that answer the question? We have to understand the question. On Shabbos, we are not allowed to do any work, any malacha, and specifically the 39 malachis, the 39 acts, which were done in order to build the Beis HaMikdash. And in Likutei Sichos, the Rebbe explains that that's because since it's a work that's necessary in the world, because the purpose of the world is to bring godliness out into it. So when we want to see what a necessary and true work is, we look at the works that were needed to build the Beis HaMikdash, and those are true acts, and anything else is a less of a true act, and it's not biblically forbidden, it's rabbinitically forbidden a lot of the time in order to make Shabbos special, and in order to keep our concentration on Hashem, and what's rabbinically forbidden is 100% forbidden. They forbade it because they saw it goes against the whole spirit of the Torah. But it comes down, that the malachis that the Torah specifically forbids are the malachis that are essential during the week for building Hashem's holy house, through which godliness will be revealed in a very physical way throughout the entire world. Why is it forbidden on Shabbos? Because we're standing in front of Hashem. A person who makes signals, weekday type signals, in front of the king, is forfeiting his life in a way. There's a story with a person who was trying to do make all kinds of terrible tsaris for Jews, and the sages stood in front of him, and the sages were talking to the king, and then he starts making all kinds of signals. And it's decided that a person who makes signals like that in front of the king goes and killed him. This was obviously a king that during the Jews' exile, this wasn't a Jewish king, but the idea is also that when we stand in front of Hashem and our hearts are opened up to Hashem, and if we're to continue that way, and we want our hearts and our spiritual life to be open and everything, then we have to, on Shabbos, when Hashem's presence is felt, we can't do these mundane things. If the king is in the field, how can we go about doing work? Oh, the king came, okay, let me open up a can of this, and let me open up that, and the king's here, good, I'm going to go move chairs around the room. That's not how it works. Today, it's interesting, when the Tsar, everyone wanted the Tsar gone, they wanted decent people to replace instead of the communists, Yimach Shemam. May their name be obliterated. But when the Tsar was gone, even though a terrible leader had been taken out, and at that time the communists had not yet taken over, you had the Mensheviks running Russia for a little while, the Talmidim in Temchet Mimim still said, the students in the Lubavitch Yeshiva said, how will we now have a moshel on Midas HaMalchus? How will we have a parable to explain Hashem's kingship? Because there was a tremendous awe, and there was also a beauty to the kingship and everything, even though this was a bad and lowly and human kingship, not at all like Hashem's kingship. But when a real king would come into a room, a king who had power over life and death and everything, nobody was sitting around and playing, nobody's in front of him. So the king's in the field. So how do we go about our daily lives? The answer is he's in the field. He's coming into the field to look at our daily lives. If a king goes to a factory to see how the factory workers work, then they should work. And so too in Elul, we examine every aspect of our life, and does that fit with Hashem? Is that in line with serving Hashem? And then we make a cheshbon and we say, to go forward, we're going to change this and we're going to change that. And this thing that's not in line with Hashem now will be in line with Hashem. And this thing that's not in line with Hashem now will be, and so on and so forth. And therefore, these are weekdays because Hashem wants to come out into every aspect of life. Then the Alter Rebbe explains the difference between a king in the field and a king in the wilderness. God forbid. A wilderness doesn't sprout life. Nothing grows there of any use. A field sprouts all kinds of produce and everything. The king can come into the field because the field is active and spreading produce. What about somebody, the Alter Rebbe says, who instead of bringing out Hashem into every aspect of his life, is found in a wilderness, is found in a desert? So he should realize that he's cut off from the king. And that should bother him, and that itself will bring him back. And if it doesn't bother him, then he's so cut off, then he's spiritually dead. And on that, even there's a way to bring him back. When he'll cry and say he's spiritually dead, he has bittul, he realizes, wow, I don't even feel upset that I'm not connected to the king. That being upset that he's not upset is a self-nullification to the king. And that is able to open up the doors to be at least broken about the fact that he's not naturally broken when he realizes he's taken from Hashem. Then that's recognizing that he's in a state of spiritual death. And on that comes the para aduma, the mitzvah of the red heifer, where they would turn all of the physicality and all of the desires into ashes and just want the king. And that would purify even from the spiritual impurification of death. And so too, one who's in the midbar and says, I'm not bothered that I'm in the midbar, let me be bothered about that, because that means I'm spiritually dead. that itself will make him again alive. And that's why Elul is such a special month. And we have the Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim, the 13 attributes of mercy, which are so high. These are high levels that are really usually only revealed on Yom Kippur, but they're revealed throughout Elul to be used in the specific way of bringing the King, bringing Hashem out into every aspect of our lives. So that is a summary of the first Maamar in Parshas Re'eh, as well as the Maamar of Lamed Beis about Chodesh Elul. These maamarim are recorded in Chabad of the Old City of Tzfat, Chabad Tzfat, tsfat.com, Chabad Tzfat, and please log on, take part, sponsor, and wish everyone a good Shabbos, a good Chodesh, and a good year.